You're still watching Acfim Talks, and we are discussing Uganda, a nation choking on debts. What does the future hold? And with me, I have two distinguished gentlemen. I have Moses Mushimo, who is the lawyer and economist, but I also have Charles Mulos, who is a public policy analyst and human rights defender. Before we went for the break, we were still making case of what are the implications to you and me, and this is why I bring in Charles here, because uh, Charles, on many occasions, I think if you've been following the news, you've heard of situations where local governments and ministries return money at the end of the financial year, having failed to spend it. Of course, they cite a number of reasons. One of them being the short time within which they're supposed to spend the money. But I'm a lay person. So when I hear that they are returning money to the coffers, and then I also hear that we are borrowing to finance a shortfall in the budget, I get confused. And now let me ask a very blunt question that a layperson would ask. Who is fooling who?
Thank you so much, Felix. I think Ugandans are fooling fellow Ugandans. We are fooling each other. So let me give you, I think it's by institutions as well as by the structure, the local government are set to fail. While I was at ActionAid, I used to work very closely as I was leading the governance and social accountability program of ActionAid. There are three aspects that I was able to deeply understand. First of all, in terms of staffing, the local government, most of the local government Ugandans, they are below 56% in staffing. That's the first and the fundamental issues. There are districts like Lamour, you find that district like Lamour, but most of these districts, almost 60% of the districts, you find one person holding around 4-5 positions. And holding that one, you hold a substantive positions and then 4 as acting capacity. And therefore, sometimes even making a quorum for procurement meeting is a challenge. So the staffing is already the beginning of a problem to start with. And then there are also stringent system and policies. The public procurement and the disposal policy itself is a whole crisis in the local government. The remittance or the transfer of money from the central government to local government has significantly improved to some extent, we appreciate. But there are hurdles that has never been addressed. Sometime by the time this money reaches the district, it's closer to the end of the financial year. And if you act otherwise, not following the whole process of the public, the PPC policy, you're bound to have a challenge. So most of these governments are set to fail. I can give you a case of Pade. Pade district is one of the districts that make substantial refund every financial year. It's a district with one street road. That's one road. It has no district hospital in the last 20 years of its operation plus. So there's a lot of challenge the district is facing, but it's one of the districts that transfer a lot of money to the consolidated fund. So as I said, the local government, first of all, are set to fail. They receive very small amount of money, percentage in terms of budget allocation. And second, they are set to fail. And already, as I said, there are economic hitmen in this country that understand they set everything to fail, whether it is a program, whether it's a budget allocation. By the time I allocate money, I was following when the current, the secretary to the treasury, when he was making a remark during the budget dialogue. He said, before even the transfer for the first quarter of the new financial year has been sent out, there are already supplementary budget. So the people who sit and determine this budget in this country, they already set up a whole process that this amount of money, I will hold it, I'm going to ask it, and I will get it. So local governments are part of the bigger victims of the governing question in this country. They are set to fail. Anyone working in local government is a real struggle. Through the association called Uganda Local Government, ULGA, Uganda Local Government Association, ULGA. They've tried to advocate, but they keep looking for individuals. Wonderful and brilliant people, like the Minister of Local Government. These are people who have led ULGA. Very brilliant. They look for individuals, pick them, co-opt them in the system, the politics of co-op, the politics of bribery, the politics of money, the politics of bribery, the politics of intimidation, the politics of everything. So the individual good citizens in local government to sit and watch. They read newspapers, wait for their salary, life go on. So by by policy, by structures, by system, local government are set to fail. And the people who are failing are the economic hitmen who are running this country, and they're not giving up. They're going to push as much as possible, provided their interest is sustained. They can't do anything to fail the country, to fail the individual within the country, and to fail the institution within the country.
Thank you so much. You are still watching Acfim Talks. You can be part of this conversation. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Our Twitter handle is at AcfimUG, and then Facebook, it's Acfim. Also YouTube, it's Acfim. You can post your question there or your comment, and we'll be able to pick it up. Let me come to you, Moses. What is the implication of this debt stock to a common person? Should I get concerned? I was reading somewhere that as of now, I owe government in terms of debt repayment 1.5 million. And actually, it was saying every Ugandan owes the data 1.5 million Uganda shillings. But paint a picture. What is the implication of this growing debt portfolio? Why would I get concerned?
Thank you, Felix. I think that statistic has increased. That was for last year, when our debt was around 65 trillion. Now we're at 80. So the figure is increasing. I think by next year it will be 2 million that each Ugandan owes to the money lenders actually, and a big part of it is to external or money lenders. But the implication is, for example, when you look at our budget envelope, if we say that 48 trillion is our budget, but remember, that is our financial budget, but we remember our debt is 80 trillion. So that one gives you, first of all, the basis where to start, the angle from which we attack this pandemic that we are in. Now, when you look at the budget composition, there is a composition of debt refinancing. Debt refinancing means that you borrow this bank or you borrow from this money lender and pay the other money lender. That one does not go even in our financial system or the government revenue streams. That one happens if you open the budget for this financial, for example, you'll notice that close to 8 trillion is on budget, or rather debt refinancing. I had already alluded to that. The other bit, and this one is even more dangerous because it is coming from our local revenue. 7 trillion out of 48 trillion is going to debt repayment and interest rate. That is debt reservicing. Now, when we scale it down to future generations, that is a burden on future generations. Generations that have not even enjoyed this money, because this money is being abused. There is a lot of corruption in central government, in local government. These civil servants, they are just there to look at avenues to embezzle these resources. I can tell you, and I think if we have Ministry of Ethics and Integrity, they are not doing enough. What is in government is sheer theft, embezzlement, corruption, all sorts of manners. There is no one who is there to deliver services. And that is very dangerous. That's why you see all the malls, if these upcoming suburbs, those who are building there are civil servants. Where are they getting the money with the salary we know they get? So we need to overhaul the system and think about how do we use this money effectively and efficiently. This is a burden that we are transferring to future generations. If we are talking about servicing these debts, it means there is an opportunity cost. That is a hospital foregone. That is a school foregone. That is a road foregone. And that is where we are heading to. Now, these loans, at times, they are not inherently bad. That one, I must make it clear. We notice we are taking some steps towards being financially and fiscally independent in terms of what you look at local revenue input into our budget. But we are still way below. We are maybe at around 50. No one will tell you these statistics. Because if we say that our resource envelope is, in terms of what URI corrects, is around 24, 25 trillion. But we tell you that our budget is 48 trillion. Where is the 23 trillion going to come from? It is through borrowing. No one is telling you that. That is the sheer statistics that everyone is hiding from. Now, here we are. How many Ugandans are employed that have income? That means a few of them are even shouldering this animal called debt servicing. The easiest income to tax in Uganda is employment income. Those struggling to go into middle class, who are not even there. Those are the people who are taxed because it is very easy to tax employment income. But we have a lot of people in what they call informal sector. People earning billions, but they are still informal sector. Those ones do not pay taxes. So I think we need to rethink about how we manage our fiscal regimes, how we mobilize these domestic resources, and how we rationalize spending, but also emphasizing the issue of stamping out corruption. Because loans like this we are discussing, which do not have conditionalities, which are not released in trenches, because some loans, if you go to multilateral institutions, and I'm not vouching for them that they are good, like World Bank, like IMF, they will tell you shall release this money in trenches based on these conditions. If they are fulfilled, they will say, let's plan. They have a framework within which they will give the money. They are guided by principles that are known. They are open to critique. All those things are not there with this loan. So, in a nutshell, the future generations, our children and grandchildren, are going to suffer the consequences of this high appetite for loans. And that is very dangerous for the country. If we do not rethink our domestic resource mobilization strategies and implement them and empower URA, first of all, to be independent, make sure that we squeeze out these generous incentives that limit our capacity to collect local revenues, then that is, I don't think we are going to have a sustainable fiscal framework within which one will guarantee that there is no inflation, that the economy is growing, but most importantly, citizens get the services they need. Over to you, Felix.
Thank you so much, Charles. And as I write on that last point Moses has made, apparently Uganda and like any other and the many African countries who are falling in love with the cupcake of China in terms of an avenue to get loans from. Also, China is seen as one of those countries that doesn't give a lot of conditions on their loans. But looking at our behavior, let me call it a behavior. We are a consumptive country. That is one. Two, but we also have a lot of hemorrhage in terms of public resources being stolen. What is the danger of being indebted to countries like China, especially when you look at the sovereignty of Uganda in the years to come? Because I'm trying to pick that up from the implications of this kind of loans, both concessional and non-concessional loans, but also where are you getting the loan from is another issue that needs to be discussed. What are the implications of Uganda's appetite and interest in loans from countries like China?
Thank you so much. And every time I reflect about this country called Uganda, if you still love this country and you build on the question of citizenship, you shed tears because the directions the country is taking is wrong, and everything about this country is getting into the direction that everyone needs to get concerned and get worried about that. The whole appetite about loan from China, there are three important aspects I need to underscore. The first one is conditionality, which Moses talked about earlier. China is about their interests. It's not about interests of building your democratic institutions, it's not about building a system of governance, not about building system of accountability. It's about what can China get? If I give you this, and always what they want to get is bigger than what they give. So for me, that's the first thing. It's about the question of the state's, the country's sovereignty. Because if you become extremely indebted as a country, it becomes very difficult for you to make a decision about how you govern your own country. Because there is going to be a third force is going to dictate how your policies need to be developed. It's going to dictate how your natural resources need to be managed. It's going to dictate how you need to actually run your own affairs in your country. So the question of state sovereignty got eroded completely because partly you've delegated part of your life to some individual external factor who is going to run your life. That's the first and the most important fundamental issues that we need to reflect as a citizen of this country, that getting these loans, as much as you want to do, you want to get, it has implication about your sovereignty, state sovereignty. We are celebrating 60 years of independence, but if I ask you, independent from what? Independent from what? We are never independent. Moses just talked about the question of the in terms of our managing our own national budget. You have a country that almost 40 plus of your national budget is managed by someone else. You're not independent. You can't claim that independent country. There's nothing to celebrate. I hear people writing everywhere, 60 years of independence, going to Kololo to waste little resources. We are never independent. And that infringes on your sovereignty, state sovereignty, because you not have a territorial independence to make a decision about your own affairs. That's the first and the most important thing. So that's the bigger implication. So why is it China? I told you, one, China is about their interest. And the interest for China is about their 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Because of the populations, people know that they are almost a highly populated country, more than 1.4 billion out of the 7 plus something billions in the world. So they need to create territory across the world so that the Chinese have home, Chinese can sustain the interests of socio-economic needs in their country, and they're very clear. Secondly, the conditionality we talk about, that some of these Western countries, they always create loans in Turkey to democracy, good governance, good leadership, building institutions of government to be in position to respect and protect the fundamental human rights. Mainly dictatorial states in Africa, Uganda inclusive, I'll speak proudly, they don't want to be held accountable because they want to be remains demigod. They get their money, use it as they wish, they spend it as they wish, and nobody should hold them accountable. So the waste over time has become problematic. And China said, I don't care about the human rights. Provided I give you money, you confirm that you're going to pay me back, either in cash or in kind, I will give you the money. So it becomes easy. The conditionality of accessing money from China is very low compared to the Western world. Third and the last and the most important thing is the whole question about geopolitics. The question of geopolitics, the continuous colonization, the quest to recolonize and remanage African continent, because the natural resources, both human, natural, it remains in the Europeans and most of the Western part, and Asians have learned it. Asians have learned that the British government or the UK is as it is because of the lot of resources that we pick from Africa. The America is what it is because of the contribution from Africa. So the whole quest about the continuous colonization of Africa, continuous management of Africa, remain part and parcel of the Western world as well as the China. So China has learned that the only way to deal with this thing is to up their game. And to up their game is to make sure that you provide incentives. And the incentives are always creating this kind of avenue which make it very easy for African government, especially those who don't want to adhere to the fundamental governance structure, system, and they run as demigods. So those are broadly the question. But how is this going to the implications of what Moses talked about it? Like over time, we have seen that the African citizens, they've started to take a back seat. You know, by the time I used not to move a lot in African countries, I used to think that Ugandan problem was very exceptional problem. But when you go to most African countries, especially where the one which have president that has run for more than 20 years plus, the problem is copy and paste. you go to Cameroon, you go to Togo, you go to most of these countries where the president has stayed for so long. The question of debts, the questions of corruptions, these ones are not called corruption, theft. Yesterday, one thing which shocked me with members of parliament when they say that we have given over 80 billions to a private individual businessman. We have given over 140 billions to another private individual person who is running a private company, and we need a certain billions to borrow. It is shocks. But how are the citizens doing? We're all holding our hands and we say, is there money? In one way or another, we are going to pay significantly by you having no land or your public lands being taken away, because all these are implications of excessive debts. Because you're going to lose your natural heritage, you're going to lose every little resources, whether it's natural water, whether it is forest, because they're going to come and take it as part of repayment for the loans that we are getting. So for me, the message I have for Ugandan citizens and everyone who love this country, we stop being tribe mates and we stop being idiots. We need to accept to be citizens and take action and responsibility that push back these individuals who are mortgaging this country and who are selling this country to the easy buyers and to the buyers who are just there to pick this country up. Thank you. I'll hand over back to you, Felix.
Thank you so much, Charles. Brings back that question: are we citizens? Are we occupants of a territory? As we bring this to a close, I have about 5 minutes to get out of here. Moses, how do we get out of this debt trap?
Thank you, Felix, and my colleague Charis. Before I talk about how to get from the debt trap, I need to emphasize that one of the dangers of these loans, especially loans from countries, for example, such as China, is that at one point we should not be surprised when we see public assets being seized. It has happened in other African countries where strategic assets like airports are taken over because, much as they do not tell you, if we did an audit of our dates, in most of these dates we put public assets, corporations' assets, as collateral security. And in case of default or failure to pay, they can be taken over. And these contingencies are materializing day by day. In fact, I can tell you now, government is on pressure to service and pay these debts. More pressure than the pressure they are feeling when it comes to payment of civil servants. Because a money lender can embarrass you in several ways, which maybe a public servant cannot. So I'm telling you that if government was to make a choice between servicing the debt and paying these workers who toil day to day, particularly, for example, teachers and health workers, who may not have these other resources that other workers are stealing, government would choose servicing the debt, and that is very dangerous for the country. And also it has an implication on service delivery. Now, what we can do, it is very simple. We have a domestic resource mobilization strategy. It may not be robust, but even the provisions in there have not been implemented. How many Ugandans pay tax? How many Ugandans evade tax? How many companies are stashing their wealth and income in other countries without paying taxes, their fair share of taxes? How many companies are exempted from taxes and they are not paying workers? They don't look after their workers. They are not, do not have social programs that support communities, and yet they are extracting materials, resources, minerals from Ugandan soil. There is a whole hullabaloo and noise about oil. How have we strategized to harness or to optimize revenue generation from our oil? The indicators we have, and particularly with the amendment of Public Finance Management Act in 2021 last year, and the Airport Special Provisions Act, we've seen that we are going to lose a lot of revenue. from the oil through these generous tax incentives. So we need to patch up these holes in our taxation policies. We need to bring a bigger spectrum of people into the taxation equation, which is not the case, but also see how we maximize these other local revenues. We have a lot of corporations that are making losses. The other day you saw the saga with Uganda Airlines. We have corporations in this country, Uganda Railways, we have many that will be making business for the government, but they are not. So there are a lot of ways we can do to boost local resource mobilization, both from tax and non-tax revenue, but also ensuring that once these tax or these revenues are generated, they are not abused. That is the most important thing, Felix and Charles. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that submission. And it's the top of the hour. I'm bringing this to a close. I think the message cutting across is that we need to get concerned about how this country is managed. The issue is a governance question. These loans are our problem, so we must get more vigilant and watch how these resources are put to use. I had with me two gentlemen. I had Moses Mushime, who is a lawyer and economist. He's also the current executive director of Open Health Network and a partner with partner Chibuka, Rashid, and Company Advocates. It's always good to have you. And also with me, I had Charles Muloz Olwenyi, who is the public policy analyst and human rights defender, and also currently works with Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa. It's always a pleasure to have you. Gentlemen, we bring it to a close. Till next time, I wish you a great weekend. Bye-bye. Take place.